Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Kmet. My co-host is Scott Stresser. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Jason. Happy belated Canada Day. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, it was Canada Day here yesterday. We were recording on Thursday evening. Yeah, my Canada Day was pretty good. No complaints. Didn't do too much. Kind of been running around with a lot of basketball and traveling here over the last little bit, but nice to kind of have a day where just to kind of chill out a bit, watch some World Cup as has become the custom around here over the last couple weeks. Man, there's been some good matches.
Absolutely. It's been a great tournament. And it's been great to have so many games to watch. I think there's a lot of cons to having such a large tournament, right? This is a 48-team World Cup, but it sure has produced a ton of games. And I've watched more World Cup this year than I have since probably 2010.
Yeah, I know this is not the focus of our podcast, but right now, I would tell you that based on what I've seen this year, the 48-team tournament is a win. More content, more stories. I think overall it's worked.
I think it's debatable because some of the teams that people were probably scratching their head going really, that team made it to the World Cup? Some of them have been awesome, right? I think Cabo Verde is the easy example, but also DR Congo. But then again, other teams have been kind of, blown out of the water, right? Like Qatar and Curacao, for instance. But overall, lots of great storylines, and it's cool to see the stars perform as expected. But as you mentioned, Jason, not the main topic for our podcast. So for new listeners, this podcast actually, it is about soccer, but not necessarily the World Cup.
Yeah, we focus on soccer in Calgary at the amateur, collegiate, and professional levels. We talk about the teams. We talk about the players from throughout the soccer community in Calgary and area, from the grassroots and amateur leagues all the way up to the pros.
Yeah, those pro teams being Cavalry FC on the men's side and the Calgary Wild on the women's side. And this week's episode, we are going to delve into both of those teams' recent and upcoming games because rarely for us, Jason, we didn't record a weekend recap this past weekend.
Yeah, just circumstances didn't really permit it, unfortunately. But yeah, we're going to review the Wild match and the APL matches from then, talk about how Cavalry didn't have a match. And then, we're going to do a bunch of previews for what's happening this upcoming weekend because, a bunch of games and a bunch of things to talk about overall, I think.
Yeah, we didn't have a guest this week, but it's been a really busy week in Calgary soccer. So I think this episode has a lot to offer, even without an interview. But Jason, why don't we kick things off with previewing Cavalry's match against Ottawa this Saturday afternoon?
I'm James McGlinchey. This is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So Cavalry FC is going to play this weekend in Ottawa. Their match last weekend against Supra was canceled because of inclement weather. So it's been a really long break for them overall. Kind of crazy how that all went down, wasn't it, Scott?
Yeah, I was at Spruce Meadows, Jason. They hosted a fantastic watch party for the Canada versus South Africa World Cup game. And, I showed up to that game with my family and it was pouring outside. It was like that day that you and I were in Edmonton for the Canada pre-World Cup game against Uzbekistan. And it just didn't let up. I think I checked a couple of times during halftime and during those hydration breaks if it was still raining, and it was. So not very surprised that a few hours afterward, Cavalry did call off the game against Supra. There were some clips circulating on social media showing the players trying to pass the ball, and it would just stop in the grass after a few meters because of how waterlogged the pitch was. So even though the rain did let off in the evening, no surprise that the game didn't go ahead, and it has been rescheduled to the end of July.
But let's get to the match at hand. Atletico Ottawa in Ottawa on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, this will be the first time Cavalry have played Ottawa since way back on April 12th when they beat them 3-1 at Spruce Meadows. Very different looking Ottawa these days. I feel like the club has rebounded from their early season form, which was not very good. And they've moved up to third place in the CPL behind Cavalry.
They're still quite a ways behind Cavalry overall, but yeah, I would agree. Their form has improved. I think Drew Becky is their interim head coach right now. So seems like things are kind of coming together for them, and we're going to probably see a better team overall by the looks of things.
There is a pretty decent gap between these two teams. Ottawa are 9 points back of Cavalry at the moment. I was interested looking at their stats, Jason. They've had a pretty decent offensive record this year, but defensively, Ottawa has been quite leaky at the back. 19 goals against in their first 10 games. So almost 2 goals against that their defense is conceding.
Yeah, so I guess we're going to have to see if Gauthier Natigny and Tobias Warszewski, Sergio Camargo, that whole crew can take advantage of that. So the match will be at 2 p.m. So even if Canada and Morocco goes into extra time, should still probably be done by the time this match happens.
Yeah, it's kind of fortuitous. It's actually, I think, the same difference in time between these two games that was the case last weekend with. Even if Canada had gone to extra time and penalties against South Africa, there still would have been time to watch the Cavalry game afterwards.
One other note about Cavalry that we wanted to mention, on Thursday, the club announced that Michael Harms has been released.
Yeah, I mean, a little surprising, Jason, but altogether not too surprising considering that Michael Harms has, not featured yet this season, hasn't even been in the 18 for the vast majority of games. And you and I had predicted a few years ago that he was about to have his breakthrough season, and it never really came to that. He's always been kind of on the outskirts of the senior squad, even though he played regularly for the League One / Alberta Premier League team.
Yeah, he's had a couple knocks, like nothing really serious, but enough to keep him out of action. I think he even hurt himself a while back in that Cavs 2 match. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit surprised. If people were listening back in the offseason, I had predicted that he could get loaned out possibly to Vancouver or something like that. And that never happened. And when they didn't re-sign Fraser Aird, it seemed like there was going to be an opportunity for him to get minutes. But Adam Perlman is just totally dominated in that right back position. So it's been hard to figure out a way to get him into the 18. And I guess these things just, eventually get to a point where I guess you just have to make decisions. And so here's the thing, Scott, me and roster construction. I love roster construction. So here's what we know. Cavalry already has another player. They have to have a new player because according to the CPL rules, every team must at all times have 3 Canadian U21 players on their roster. And right now, Cavalry has 3. They've got Nico Maroniak, Adam Perlman, and James McGlinchey. But James McGlinchey is an extraordinary young player, which means he's not included as part of the regular roster and does not count towards that total. So they need to have another player who is Canadian and U21 in order to meet the roster requirements for the CPL. We're recording this on Thursday night. I fully expect by Friday morning or Friday by lunchtime, there will be an announcement of a new player on Cavalry, and it will be a Canadian player, and they will qualify as a U21 player.
Yeah, this is great. Great from you, Jason. Kudos for digging into the roster rules. I never even thought of this at all, but you're 100% bang on. So any speculation on who this Canadian U21 player could be?
If I had more time, I think I could figure it out, but I have not been able to figure it out as yet. It is probably a Canadian player who is in Europe, a young Canadian player who their contract ran out at the end of June. Like, you know how most European contracts, they're over June 30th. So I expect that it's probably a player that maybe he's been in Calgary for a while, but he knew he was going to get released. And as of June 30th, he officially is out of contract. And now he will be signed to a CPL contract with Cavalry. That's my guess.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens. But very intriguing to see who the club announces as this third U21 player.
This is Maggie Doherty Howard, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, pivoting to the city's other professional team, the Calgary Wild will be facing the Ottawa Rapids. So both Calgary teams will be playing opponents from Canada's capital this weekend. But Jason, before we preview that match, we should talk about the Wild's last game, which was a home battle last Saturday afternoon. Pretty rainy day at McWomen Stadium. And a heartbreaker for the Calgary Wild as they fall yet again to the Tides, losing 1-0, thanks to a late-minute goal from, who else? Sarah Miller.
Yeah, I got to say, there were a lot of repeating themes here. Rainy weather, Sayora Miller scoring, Caitlin Talbot errors, and Wild not scoring.
Yeah, they did have their chances, but unfortunately they weren't capitalizing, were they? We thought, Jason, I really thought that Maya Jones was going to be able to turn this offense around, but despite her playing her first full match for the Wild, they just don't seem to make it happen, do they? And how many games now have they gone without scoring? I think 5 or something like that.
That sounds about right. When you look at what happened in that match, there was a lot of chances. And, there was a bar, there was a lot of things that happened. But at the end of the day, I've said this before, it's a results-based business and the results aren't there. So even though there was probably more life in the offense than there has been, the end net result is unfortunately the same.
Yeah, and that keeps the Wild in the basement of the Northern Super League, where they've been for pretty much the entire 2026 campaign. And I think it's now an 8-point gap between them and the second last place team, which is the Vancouver Rise, who are the only team in the NSL that the Wild haven't played yet, curiously. And that will continue for another match day. As we mentioned, they'll be playing Ottawa this weekend, who happen to be in first place.
Yeah, so Sunday at noon, they'll be playing the Rapid. You realize, I think you mentioned this earlier, but both Calgary teams are going to be playing in Ottawa the same weekend, 22 hours apart.
Yeah, I'm not sure they've ever had an away game in the same city before. I can't recall if that's ever happened or not.
Another recurring theme, I guess, for the Wild is going to be injuries. The injury report from the NSL was announced today. We did get news last week that Ali Hess is out for the season, so she is still on this injured list. Farkuna Mataj still on the list. Callie Johnson, we know about her injury. And then 2 players that weren't put on that injury list last week, Jackie Sawicki and Talia White, they're on it this week. So we've got 5 injured players that we know are going to be out. And, on a roster of 23, that means they have 18 healthy players. And that includes 3 keepers. So yeah, the injury bug continues. And the news about Ali Hess, we were kind of under the impression that she was getting close to a return, but apparently not.
Yeah, this is a huge setback for the team. I think you and I were really excited about this signing, Jason, in the offseason. Ali Hess played regularly for a very strong Montreal team last year and was a starter in central midfield, which, Calgary's best player is in central midfield, but having another strong, proven talent with NSL experience was really going to bolster their center midfield. But unfortunately, she'll have gone her first year with the club having not played a single minute, which is the same case as with Farkuna Mataj last year and this year. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding what's going on at the Wild and why their players are getting injured so much. We never found out, did we, if she was injured when she was signed or if it occurred in preseason or what, and what even her injury is.
Correct. We don't know any of that information. The only thing I can tell you for sure is I have seen her in person at a previous match and she wasn't walking with a brace or a cast or anything like that, but that doesn't really mean that much overall, but that would, easily answer a question potentially, but yeah, we don't know really much of anything.
Another note of mention is the Wild will be losing one of their regular starters this season. 17-year-old Tora Betteridge played her final match for the Wild as she'll be going to the University of Michigan pretty soon.
Another roster construction bit of information here. Tora Betteridge appeared in all 8 of the Wild's first matches. And according to the youth permit rules in the NSL, the maximum number of games you can play is 8. So I don't actually know if she's jumping on a plane and going to Michigan like this week or whatever, but she has used up all 8 of her matches that she could play. So even if she theoretically is still in town this week, she can't play for the Wild anymore. The 8 matches have been used up.
Jason, I'm going to make a sad prediction that the Wild are going to lose by 5 this weekend.
I think it could be ugly because look at it this way. Michaela Moore back from injury. So I guess, you can sort of put her in there as one of the starting center backs, but Tora Betteridge has started most of the matches and she's out. She's done. Talia White she's another natural center back they have. We know she's out of action for this week. So all they really have is Tilly James. That's really it at this point, unless they could move Sonia O'Neill back to play center back, which is not her natural position. But as it stands, Sonia O'Neill has been playing regularly in the midfield this year. So that would require more juggling. So defensively, not deep. And I will say one thing: I sure hope Michaela Moore doesn't go down with some kind of pulled muscle or some kind of something in the first half, because it could get real bad after that.
Yeah, you just elaborated on exactly why I think this could be a really ugly outing for the Wild. Cocktail of bad luck and bad circumstances and losing players for different reasons means that they have one naturalized center back on the travel roster, I would assume, because Tilly James is also, not a natural center back and has looked really shaky in a lot of games this year, to be honest, in that position, Jason. So between that and some of the goalkeeping challenges we've seen, Caitlin Talbert, it does not bode well for a positive performance. I really hope the Wild can prove me wrong. I'm not sure if they'll hear this before they play and want to stick it to me, but I just have a bad feeling about this game. Ottawa is really strong, first place for a reason, and Calgary's last place for a reason, or for several reasons.
I'm tending to agree with you that I think there could be a lot of goals scored, but yeah, I think this is going to be a hard one to get any points in, I think.
My name is Mo Gander, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
All right, we've got a lot of Alberta Premier League action to talk about. We're going to go back to Friday because we didn't do our weekend recap episode. We're going to talk about the results on Friday and then also the results on Tuesday. So let's start that off and let's just maybe divide it out this time. We'll go through all the women's matches first, and then we can go back and do the men's matches afterwards. So
for sure, and let's start with the most one-sided game of the weekend. That being Foothills' 9-0 rout over Callies at Macron.
Ouch.
Yeah, but a great game for Emma Nicholson as well as for former podcast guest Avril Jameson. Emma Nicholson picked up 4 goals in this one, and Avril Jameson with a hat trick.
Julie Randall and Kalia Bezetta also got 1 goal each.
And then on the opposite side of Calgary, out on the western boundary of the city, Rangers played BTB from Edmonton. And BTB won this one 3-1. Rangers' lone goal came from Isabel Okaniwa.
And up in St. Albert, St. Albert Impact played Calgary Wild U23, and the Wild pulled out the victory. That's pretty good. Going up to St. Albert, that's always a really strong squad. They won 1-0.
Yeah, 1-0 for the Wild U23s, and that keeps them at the top of the table. Anna Hauer, another former podcast guest, scoring the goal.
And sticking with women's results, let's talk about Tuesday. There was one match. This was a match that got moved, Scott. It was supposed to be over in my neck of the woods in Broadview, but because of the smoke, it got moved into the Villains Dome.
Yeah, and that paid dividends for Blizzard, who won this game 1-0 with Sarah Donick scoring the only goal of the game. And Jason, did you notice that there is going to be an APL doubleheader in Airdrie coming up pretty soon?
I did. I think it's next weekend, like the 10th, something like that. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I wish I took down the notes, but I remember seeing an article about it in the Airdrie City View. So if you are up in either North Calgary or if we have any listeners in Airdrie, there is an APL game coming to a pitch near you.
Yeah, I think we'll probably talk about that more next week, I think. But yeah, that is pretty cool. So let's look at the women's division table, and the Calgary Wild are on top. 9 matches, 21 points.
Yeah, they're having a great year, Jason. 7 wins, 2 losses, 21 goals for, and only 11 against. So deservedly at the top, although Blizzard are breathing down their necks, just 1 point back.
1 point back and a game in hand. So it's pretty close up there with the two of them. And then BTB has 16 points. So they're 4 behind the Blizzard and 5 behind the Wild. And then Foothills women, they're at 15 points, but they have a game in hand, but they've kind of fallen off the pace a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were up at near the top of the table a few match days ago. So a little bit of a dip, but that one-sided win last week means that they're shoulder to shoulder with the teams above them in terms of goals for. 20 goals from their 8 games and a goal differential of 9.
And rounding out the table, St. Albert Impact have 11 points. The Rangers have 9 points. Villains and Callies have 3 points each. So that's where the table sits. And do you remember, Scott? I don't know if it was last episode or one of the more recent episodes, we were talking about could the Wild potentially could represent Alberta in the interprovincial championships. in August? And I think we got an answer now, don't we?
It turns out that there won't be an interprovincial championships this year, Jason, which when you told me, I was quite disappointed to hear that because that really was the carrot on the stick in the women's division in particular of the Alberta Premier League. But apparently it's going to be replaced with something even more enticing for the winner of the women's division.
Yeah, details are not too specific or clear yet, but the idea is in 2027, there will be some kind of competition like the Men's Canadian Championship, which presumably will involve the NSL teams and presumably the winners of the various provincial leagues. So we don't know this, but it seems reasonable to think that the women's division winner, instead of going to interprovincials in August, will have some involvement in this new Canadian Championship next season.
And I think this is a really good move overall because as we've seen with the last two, or I guess they'd be the first two iterations of interprovincial championships, the Alberta representative, which has been Blizzard both years, I think, did not send their strongest squad. And that's because most of their best players were already training with their university teams at that point. So this kind of removes that from the equation, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, because presumably those matches would be earlier in the season when those players would be available, kind of like how it was for the Blizzard on the men's side this year. So we don't know all of those details yet because I'm not sure how many of them are even have been completely ironed out yet, but we do have that information. And we do know another bit of info. There will be no playoffs in the women's division this year. So how the regular season table sits, that's where it'll be. There will be no other playoffs or anything like that. Because wasn't it last year where there was going to be a playoff and then there wasn't a playoff? And we know right now going in, there's no plans for playoffs.
And is it a 14-game season then with playing every team twice?
It is, yes.
Okay, so we've now passed the halfway point of the year, and I guess there's either 5 or 6 games left for everybody in the APL on the women's side.
Okay, let's go over to the men's division and let's go back to Friday and the Friday results. First match, we'll talk about Foothills versus Callies, and that was at Macron, and Foothills won 5-1.
Yeah, goals really spread out in this one. Tim Beckadal, I believe he was with the MRU Cougars. Logan Riek, Robert Woodruff Brown, Fraser Aird, and Emmanuel Dan Adokiani scoring for Foothills, and Mohammed Nasser scoring for Callies.
And like we did on the women's division, let's go from one side of the city to the other, go over to Weber Athletic Park and Rangers against BTB. And BTB won this match 2-1. Rangers' lone goal was scored by Jace Shaw.
And then up north, Cavalry 2 traveled to St. Albert, where they played the Impact to a 2-2 draw with goals coming from a couple familiar faces, those being Lukey Hama and James McGlinchey, both involved with the senior squad.
And then let's go over to Tuesday results. Villains played Blizzard, and this was an ugly one. Not quite 9-0 ugly, but 9-2 ugly.
Yeah, with Blizzard winning that one. This is a case of, I think, first against last in the table.
Yes.
Yeah, and unexpected result, although the scoreline is definitely uglier than Villains would have hoped. Blizzard, a great night for former podcast guest Moel Gandor. He got a hat trick. Both Plenzik siblings scored in this one, Marco with a brace and Joey with one. And then Blizzard's other goals came from Kimia Cassanda, Jacob Hunter, Spencer McCallum, James Greco-Taylor, and then another goal from NA, who we believe to be Aiden Izadi.
What's the deal with Aiden Izadi and not getting on the roster on the official score sheet? That's the second time this has happened.
That's the second time, yeah. He was last week too, I think.
And for Villains, Massey Debaji and Shadrick Boyeki notched the goals.
Yeah, so looking at the table, that result keeps Blizzard top with a perfect 8-0-0 record. 28 goals in their 8 games so far, and just 5 goals against, the leanest defense in the Alberta Premier League.
Think about this for a second, Scott. 5 goals against, and 2 of them were against Villains.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if they just completely... I don't know when Villains scored their goals in this game, but I'm wondering if Blizzard just completely took their foot off the gas or tried some experimental tactics, moved players around, brought players on who haven't maybe played as much. But that's an interesting observation.
Blizzard has 24 points, but BTB also has 24 points, but they have an extra game they've played. They've played 9 games. And then you go to Foothills in third with 19 points on 8 games. So they've got the same number of games as Blizzard. So really, it's a 3-horse race.
Yeah, Foothills, I think, could still, pose a threat depending on how their last few weekends go this season. Foothills, it's been their offense, hey, like 32 goals for in their 8 games so far. They're a little bit more prone to conceding than the 2 teams ahead of them with 9 goals against. But I agree with you. It's a 3-horse race because after Foothills, it's a pretty big gap before you get to Cavalry 2, who are 7 points back with 10 matches played.
But here is the thing, though, Scott. Foothills and Blizzard have not played each other yet.
And we keep waiting for that match. We've talked about it.
But they're going to have to play twice yet, right? Not just once. They have to play twice.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Should set up a really interesting end to the regular season.
So when it comes right down to it, if you're Foothills on the men's, let's talk about the men's side because we're talking about that right now. If you're Foothills and you can win both of those matches against Blizzard, you're right in it.
Yeah, because Foothills have only lost once.
And to round out the standings, all of these teams are quite far back, but Cavalry FC 2 has got 12 points, St. Albert's got 8, Callies have 5, Villains have 4, and Rangers have 1.
Yeah, really rough campaign for Rangers thus far, especially considering they were pretty strong last year. What do you think has contributed to that drop?
I'm not sure. I have not really looked at their roster, so I can't really make an assessment of that too easily. I know that, Miguel De Rocha was playing for them last year, and I think he's been playing for Foothills this year, but I don't think it's as simple as that. He's a good player, obviously, but I don't really know. Never seem to get to Rangers games, so they're a team that we probably, know the least about when it comes right down to it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But I noticed a little bit of parallel here with the men's division in the APL and the Canadian Premier League, Jason. It seems like there's definitely a gap in quality between the top and bottom halves of the table.
Oh, totally agree. Yeah. Well, if you look at it, it's the same 4 clubs essentially in the top 4. Like Blizzard, BTB, and Foothills are in the top 4 on both sides, and then Wild, U23, and Cavalry 2 are also in there. So,
yeah, that's kind of what I mean in the sense that like Blizzard and Foothills are the Cavalry and Forge, the Forge and Cavalry of the APL. And
so 3 doubleheaders on Friday. We've got Rangers and Foothills playing at Weber. We've got Villains versus St. Albert at Broadview, and up in Edmonton, BTB and Blizzard.
Yeah, and almost all those games are kicking off at the same time. Mostly the men are playing at 5:30 p.m. between Blizzard and BTB, and Rangers and Foothills, with the women following up at 7:45. And it's kind of different for the game at Broadview. The games at Broadview, Villains versus St. Albert. The women get things going at 5, and then the men follow at 7:30.
And the last thing we'll mention about the men's division is we also got confirmation that there will be no playoff for the APL this year. It will be the APL title will be based on regular season performance. So presumably the Canadian Championship will need an APL representative, and that will be the team that is at the top of the regular season table.
Hey everyone, it's Don Sator, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So let's end our episode this week off with some news about a 2-time podcast guest who we've talked about a lot, Jason Dominic Zator. He is leaving Arca Gdynia, despite, I believe, still having 1 year left on his contract. The club was just relegated. Zator played semi-regularly for them in 2025-26. Looks like he's leaving his club. It was announced today.
I saw Northern Tribune actually caught this originally, and then I did some digging around further and found the official statement from his club, Arca Gdynia, and it did mention on there that his contract was being terminated by mutual consent. So as we kind of knew, he did have more time on his contract, but he was still leaving the club. I would presume, Scott, that there's probably a clause in a lot of players' contracts that would stipulate that they have an out of their contract if the team gets relegated. So I'm guessing that clause was in his contract and he decided to take it.
I think you're 100% right. This is pretty common in European professional soccer contracts. So yeah, I mean, I thought he'd really thrive in the second division in Poland, but yeah, it looks like he's a free agent at the moment, and I guess we'll probably find out soon where he's going to play next.
Well, I would say right now that my prediction is he's already found another club, because why would you walk away from the 1 year of the contract? It's probably a situation where when it was known that Arca Gdynia was going to go down, I'm guessing that Zatora and his camp, his agent, probably started making some inquiries to find out, is there interest in him, like if he could get out of his contract, which he could. So I fully expect that he is already signed someplace. Probably, most likely, a team in the first division in Poland. But I would say that the reason that he most likely activated that clause, if that's what we think happened, it's probably because he knew he had something else already ready to go.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I'm excited to see where he ends up. I feel like I've been following Zatora's career since the beginning. So yeah, I mean, he obviously is proven at this point, right? I think he's at 3.5 years in the Ekstraklasa with 2 different clubs. And obviously, his resume is quite impressive. And he's 31, but keeps himself in incredibly good fitness. So I'm sure he's still got lots of gas left in the tank. And I know he's an ambitious guy. So very excited to see where he ends up.
Yeah, and if anyone's wondering, what are the chances he could end up in the CPL? Haven't heard anything. Made some inquiries to see if there was any potential buzz, but nobody's heard anything. So leads me to think that even more so that he's more likely to stay in Europe.
The last thing we'll mention is that U Sports has released its 2026 soccer season schedules since our last episode. Season is approaching, Jason. I always get excited for university soccer to get going. I always try to get out to the Crowchild Classic, and we know that will be happening quite early in the season this year, with the men's first Crowchild Classic happening August 27th at McMahon Stadium.
That is the first match of the season for those clubs, I believe, and I believe the second version of the Crowchild Classic will be on the last weekend of the season, on October 24th.
Yeah, so a season bookended by the Crowchild Classics on the men's side. On the women's side, the first edition of the Crowchild Classic will be held September 26th, and the follow-up game will be on October 9th. And considering how it went last season, Jason, with the Cougars spoiling the Dinos' perfect regular season record on the last day of the season, really looking forward to those battles.
Absolutely. Looking forward to U Sports season again. I found every year we've been doing the podcast, I seem to get into the U Sports season a little bit more. So fun stuff. Looking forward to it.
Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this episode downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check our website at yycsoccer.com. There, you can look through our episode archive and find other ways to listen, including our YouTube channel. We also have links to buy my book, Here Come the Cavalry, which is all about the history of professional soccer in Calgary. You can leave a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website. You can also interact with us on social media such as X, Instagram, or Blue Sky. Our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.